Picture this. It's a Monday morning at the office. Someone walks in wearing a jersey, coffee in hand, looking absolutely devastated, and you have absolutely no idea why. Someone else explains that the team lost last night in the final minutes, and you nod slowly, offering what you hope passes as a sympathetic expression. But inside, and be honest here, you feel nothing, not even a flicker. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a small, quiet voice whispers, "What is wrong with me?" Nothing. Nothing is wrong with you. And today we're going to talk about exactly why. Because here's what's interesting. We live in a world where sports are basically the operating system of social culture. Super Bowl Sunday is practically a national holiday. Fantasy football has its own emotional ecosystem. The phrase, "Did you watch the game?" functions as a universal icebreaker, a membership badge, a shared language that billions of people use to connect. And yet, a significant portion of the population just doesn't get it, doesn't feel it, watches a stadium full of 80,000 screaming people and thinks, genuinely, why are they like this? So what's actually going on in the minds of people who are indifferent to sports? Is it a personality flaw, a cultural gap, a broken empathy circuit? The answer, as psychology tends to reveal, is far more nuanced and honestly far more fascinating than any of those explanations. Let's start with the brain, because your brain is the reason for almost everything interesting about you, including this. When sports fans watch a game, something remarkable happens neurologically. Mirror neurons, the same neurons that fire when you physically perform an action, also fire when you watch someone else do it. This is why fans wince when a player gets tackled, why your heart races during penalty kicks even when you're sitting still on your couch. The brain, on some level, is playing the game with the players. It's a neurological empathy machine, and sports happen to be a perfectly engineered trigger for it. But here's where it gets interesting. Not every brain responds to that trigger equally. Research in psychology has consistently shown that responses to competitive stimuli, meaning situations involving winning, losing, dominance, and performance, vary enormously across individuals. Some people's nervous systems are essentially tuned to that frequency. Others simply aren't. And that tuning has a lot to do with genetics, early exposure, and something psychologists call identity fusion. Identity fusion is what happens when a person's sense of self becomes genuinely intertwined with a group. Real Madrid fans don't just support the team, they are the team. A loss feels like a personal failure. A championship feels like personal vindication. This is why sports fandom can be so emotionally intense, so tribal, sometimes so irrational, because it's not really about the sport anymore, it's about belonging, it's about self. Now, here's the key. People who don't connect with sports aren't missing the capacity for identity fusion. They have it. Every human being has it. They've just fused their identities elsewhere. With music scenes, with literary communities, with gaming culture, with scientific disciplines, with social causes. The psychology is identical. The arena is just different. A person who rolls their eyes at football fever but loses their mind over a new album drop from their favorite artist? Same mechanism, same neurochemistry, different stadium. So the absence of sports enthusiasm is almost never about apathy in general. It's almost always about where a person's passion has been directed. And that direction, research suggests, is shaped enormously in childhood. There's a concept in developmental psychology sometimes called the critical window of attachment, a period in early life when repeated exposure to something pleasurable essentially programs that thing into your brain as a source of reward. Kids who grew up with parents who turned every Sunday into a ritual, the chips, the jersey, the whole ceremony, those kids often carry that wiring into adulthood. It becomes less about the sport itself and more about the warmth, the belonging, the memory of being part of something together. People who didn't have that experience, they never got the programming. The sport arrives in their adult life as a stranger, carrying none of the emotional history, and the brain simply goes, I don't know what to do with this. It's not coldness, it's context. It's the difference between hearing a song for the first time and hearing the song that played at your grandmother's kitchen table every Sunday morning. One is just sound, the other is a time machine. There's also a personality dimension worth exploring here, and it connects to something called sensation seeking, a psychological trait that describes how much a person craves intense, varied, novel stimulation. People who score high on sensation seeking tend to be drawn to the volatility of sports, the unpredictability, the emotional swings, the stakes. People who score lower often prefer experiences that are quieter, more controlled, more internally generated. Neither is better. They're just different orientations to stimulation, and they predict a lot about what we find thrilling versus exhausting. And this brings us to something that doesn't get talked about enough, which is the social cost of not caring about sports. Because in many cultures, particularly places like the United States, the UK, parts of Latin America, much of Europe, sports aren't just entertainment, they're social infrastructure. They're the language of the water cooler, the glue of the locker room, the bridge between strangers at a barbecue. Not speaking that language can create a real and persistent feeling of being slightly outside, of watching everyone else share something you can't quite access. And over time, that feeling, quiet, persistent, can start to read like loneliness.
What's worth saying to anyone who has felt that way is this: you are not failing at being human. You are not emotionally stunted or weirdly detached. Your brain is doing exactly what brains do, finding the specific inputs that make you feel alive and gravitating toward them. The fact that those inputs aren't a ball going into a net doesn't make them lesser. It makes them yours. There's actually some research suggesting that people who don't follow sports often compensate with deeper investment in individual creative pursuits. They tend to spend more time in what psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi called flow states, those absorptive experiences where time disappears because you're completely inside what you're doing. Writing, painting, building, coding, cooking, the same altered consciousness a soccer fan reaches at the 93rd minute, some people find at the writing desk at 2 in the morning. Different doorway, same room. And there's something genuinely beautiful about that, if you sit with it. We are all looking for the same things: excitement, meaning, connection, the feeling that what we're doing matters. We are all trying to feel something real. Sports offer one magnificent, communal, ancient way of doing that, but they are one way among many. And the richness of human experience is precisely that there are as many paths to feeling alive as there are people living them. So if you're someone who's never understood the fuss about the game, here's what I want you to take away. The psychology says you're not broken. It says you're wired differently, shaped by different experiences, tuned to a different frequency. It says your passion exists. It's just somewhere else. And wherever that somewhere else is, it's worth finding it, naming it, and refusing to apologize for it. Because the people who understand why you cry at a book, or why you stayed up until 3 a.m. finishing a project, or why a piece of music can stop you cold in a grocery store, those people are your stadium. Find them. If something in this resonated with you, drop a comment below. I'm genuinely curious. If not sports, what's your arena? Where does your passion actually live? Let me know. And if you want more deep dives into the psychology of everyday experience, the subscribe button is right there waiting for you.